Most people driving along that Michigan highway that afternoon had no idea they were only moments away from witnessing a disaster. Traffic moved normally beneath the gray skies while vehicles rushed down the road like any other ordinary day in America. Families were heading home after work. Truck drivers continued across endless miles of highway. People listened to music, talked on the phone, or simply followed their daily routines without realizing that somewhere in the middle of that traffic, a tragedy was already beginning to unfold. Because among the moving vehicles on that highway, one pickup truck had quietly become something extremely dangerous. And inside it, a 63-year-old man was slowly losing control of his own body while the vehicle continued speeding forward. At first, very few people realized something was seriously wrong. The pickup truck simply appeared to drift slightly between lanes. Some drivers assumed the man behind the wheel was distracted. Others thought he might be tired or looking down at his phone. But it quickly became clear that this was different. The truck was becoming more unstable by the second, while continuing forward at speeds capable of turning even a small mistake into a devastating catastrophe. That was when deputies patrolling the area noticed the situation and immediately understood something terrifying. The driver was suffering a serious medical emergency while operating the vehicle. Within seconds, the situation stopped being a simple traffic incident. The truck continued moving forward without full control, while dozens of innocent drivers traveled around it, completely unaware of the dangers surrounding them. In that moment, officers understood exactly what could happen if the situation spiraled out of control. One collision, one sudden turn, a few seconds of complete unconsciousness behind the wheel. That was all it would take for the highway to turn into a scene of destruction, involving families who were simply trying to make it home safely. Patrol vehicles quickly approached the truck while flashing red and blue lights cut through the highway traffic. Officers attempted to get the driver's attention by positioning their vehicles beside the pickup and shouting commands, hoping he could still respond. But something frightening became obvious almost immediately. The man was no longer reacting normally. His body seemed to drift further away from reality, while the pickup truck continued moving like a ticking time bomb in the middle of the highway. Inside the patrol vehicles, tension grew with every passing second. Officers watched the truck drift dangerously close to nearby vehicles while desperately trying to find a safe way to stop a disaster from unfolding. But there was no perfect protocol for a situation like this. There was no time for careful planning. Everything was happening too fast. In moments like these, police officers are forced to make impossible decisions under enormous pressure, while knowing that even a single mistake could cost innocent lives. Among the deputies responding that day was one officer who realized time was running out. The pickup truck was still moving. The driver was losing his ability to control the vehicle entirely, and every second increased the danger for everyone on that highway. Waiting no longer seemed like an option, and that was the moment she made a decision that would shock people across the country. While both vehicles continued moving at highway speed, the deputy began climbing out of her own patrol vehicle. Wind slammed violently against her body, while traffic continued racing around them at dangerous speeds. One wrong movement could throw her directly onto the pavement. One mistake could leave her crushed between moving vehicles. And still, she kept moving forward, because in that moment, she knew dozens of innocent lives depended on what she was about to do. This is the part of the story that almost feels impossible to believe. While the pickup truck continued speeding down the highway, the deputy literally climbed from her moving patrol vehicle toward the uncontrolled truck beside her. There was no guarantee she would succeed, no guarantee she would survive. But real courage rarely appears under perfect conditions. Most of the time, it appears in moments where there is no time left to hesitate. Drivers nearby could barely process what they were witnessing. Patrol vehicles surrounded the pickup while flashing emergency lights illuminated the entire highway in red and blue reflections. And in the middle of all that chaos, one deputy willingly risked her own life to save a complete stranger she had never met before. Not because someone ordered her to do it, not because cameras were recording, but because protecting lives is exactly what officers swear to do the moment they put on the badge. Eventually, she managed to reach the pickup truck, and the situation inside the vehicle was even worse than officers feared. The driver was nearly unconscious while the truck continued moving through live traffic at dangerous speed. In that moment, there was no space for fear, no time to think about consequences. Her entire focus narrowed down to one mission: stop that vehicle before somebody died. With adrenaline surging through her body, the deputy fought to take control of the truck while officers around her worked desperately to secure the situation in the middle of the highway. Any small mistake could still end in disaster. The truck was still moving. Traffic still surrounded them. And during those terrifying seconds, countless lives remained hanging by a thread. To the people witnessing it from nearby vehicles, the entire scene looked unreal, like something pulled directly from an American action movie. But this was not Hollywood. This was real life, real officers, real danger, real families at risk. And unlike the movies, there was no script guaranteeing a happy ending. One impact, one wrong turn of the wheel, 1 second of lost control could have transformed that highway into a national tragedy. Then finally, the pickup truck began to slow down. Slowly, the vehicle moved away from the dangerous flow of traffic while officers around it blocked the highway and secured the area. The threat that had endangered dozens of innocent people finally started to disappear. And at the center of it all stood a deputy who had willingly risked her own life to stop a tragedy involving people she had never even met. The 63-year-old driver survived because those officers refused to give up on him. And perhaps that is the most powerful part of the entire story. Because in the middle of the chaos, they could have viewed him simply as a dangerous vehicle threatening innocent lives. Instead, they saw something greater, a human being suffering a medical emergency whose life still mattered. Even while placing themselves in danger, they kept fighting to save his. Stories like this remind people that police work is rarely predictable. Some shifts involve simple calls and routine traffic stops. Others suddenly transform into moments where seconds separate dozens of people from death. Officers never know which ordinary call might suddenly demand extraordinary courage without warning. There is also something deeply emotional about the fact that the deputy never had time to mentally prepare for what she was about to do. She simply recognized the danger, understood innocent people could die, and acted immediately. That kind of courage does not come from recklessness. It comes from training, discipline, duty, and the willingness to place the lives of strangers above personal safety. Across America, millions of people drive highways every single day without ever thinking about the officers patrolling nearby roads. Most never imagine that somewhere close to them, an officer might one day risk everything to keep them alive. But stories like this reveal the silent reality hidden behind every patrol car. Behind every badge is someone willing to run toward danger while everyone else runs away from it. After the story spread across the country, millions of Americans saw something larger than law enforcement in that deputy's actions. They saw courage under pressure, instant sacrifice, real heroism unfolding in seconds. Because while most people on that highway could only watch the chaos happen, she made the decision to risk her own life to stop dozens of families from being destroyed that afternoon. Long after traffic returned to normal and the flashing patrol lights disappeared into the distance, one truth remained impossible to ignore. Countless people made it home safely that night because one deputy refused to stand by and watch a tragedy unfold. Families returned home to their children. Innocent drivers continued their lives without ever realizing how close they had come to disaster. And somewhere along that highway stood a deputy who understood something that defines many men and women in American law enforcement. Sometimes real courage means acting within seconds, even when fear tells you not to.